When I go through people's Clifton Strengths reports, I don't necessarily see strengths, and I definitely don't see weaknesses in it. To me, what they represent is your perspective story. And what I mean by that is it tells a story of how you as an individual, based on your experiences and where your self-intelligence lies, where you're at in life, maybe how many different changes that you've been dealing with, where is your perspective in terms of how do you go through and tackle just everyday life, just the normal stuff that we all deal with day in and day out, and other people. How do we deal with other people based on the way that we feel about and we understand ourselves? But how do we go about those things in a way that is natural to us and in the way that we feel good about it and other people are more drawn to us then? Because when we're behaving in a way that we think we should, or oh, so and so is doing things like that, so I think I should too, then that's when it gets uncomfortable for ourselves and other people, and we may have frustration and conflict, or when we want, need, or expect other people to approach the everyday things in life the same way that we do. Again, that's all about perspective, and these tell me a story of your perspective. So one of the cool things that I recently did is I had a client retake the assessment just to see, do they change as life changes? Because when you're in those young adult years, sometimes things, progress pretty linear, and sometimes they stay fairly consistent. But a lot of times you do a lot of growth, emotionally, mentally, sometimes even physically, but a lot of things can change in your life during those early 20s as well. So this person originally took the assessment when they were 19 and in college, and now they are almost 25 and living a different more into the adulting world now. So I wanted to see what would come up in the strength story here with the perspective. And there's some pretty interesting shifts. Now, overall, fundamentally, they're very similar, high in the same dominant domains. Some of that shifted a little bit, but for the most part, ultimately, and in fact, 5 of the 10 stayed in the top 10, and even 1 or 2 of the other ones stayed pretty high to the top 10. 3 of the bottom 5 stayed in the bottom 5 as well. But there were some really significant changes, which I thought to be very fascinating. So I've gone through and I've looked them all over, and the story has come to me in terms of the perspective and the changes and the growth that this person has gone through. So one of those differences is now number 2 is empathy, whereas before it was 21. So it wasn't in the bottom, but it just wasn't as prevalent. And now this person has probably, when you get a little bit older and you're experiencing more in life, everything isn't centered around you as much. You're realizing that there's more going on and that other things happen, and oh wow, other people are affected by things too. And sometimes you can feel that as a child growing up, for sure. Sometimes as a teenager, empathy is very high for a lot of people, but sometimes it comes more out of experience and growth. And so now this person feels naturally the feelings of others. And it could be too that maybe they felt that all along, but just were unsure of how to handle it, so kind of squashed it down a little bit. And when you get older, you get more comfortable in realizing your own natural gifts and the fact that it doesn't make me soft to feel other people's feelings, or whatever your thoughts might be around it. Again, so much of who we are shaped by other people and what their thoughts are and the way their process and their perspective that they put onto us, especially as you're growing up, when you're influenced by your your parents and other friends and other people, teachers in your life. So it was very interesting to me that empathy has now risen to the number 2 spot. And then context also is one that was in the bottom 5 and now is at number 4. So this tells me the context strength is about how you view the past and what your appreciation is for history. So this tells me that maybe this person has let go of some things that maybe bothered them about the past before. Maybe they've worked through some experiences, and again, they have now a different perspective of them. When you were looking at things as a teenager and we're thinking about the past, there can be a lot of still angst involved in that. But when you get older and you have a better perspective for, oh, hey, my teachers are actually like real people too. And wow, my parents had experiences in their lives that led them to behave the way that they do. I can now put that in a better frame of mind and a better perspective. So maybe I don't hold on to as much trauma from it or just irritation by it. It could be too that maybe they've even gone further than their own past and they now have a appreciation for history in general, and maybe they're becoming more aware of what's going on in the world and seeing how history is cyclical and what might be coming up from decades and eons ago to what's happening now even, and have more of an awareness and appreciation of that. So it's very interesting to me that context went from the very bottom 31 all the way up to number 4. And then the same thing with connectedness. That was 27 and now it's number 6. So that one is the strength where you have the feeling that everything happens for a reason and it's all meant to be. And this person also had responsibility at number 5. And number 5 is that compass strength. That's the one that guides you. That's your go-to. Now it's maximizer for that person. And before it was responsibility. Responsibility has now dropped to number 14. Not super low, but definitely a shift from that prominent position of your core strength. So what that tells me is that they no longer feel like the weight of the world is on their shoulders and it has to be up to them. And self assurance was also at number 9, and now that's at number 17. They have given themselves the break that I don't have to have all the answers. The whole world doesn't have to be on my shoulders for me to think that I have to take care of. They have learned to let things go and given it to maybe a higher power, maybe left it up to the universe. Maybe they haven't even figured that part out yet, but regardless, they now have a lighter air of a little bit more passive feeling of it's all meant to be. It's going to work itself out. Connections will come as they're meant to. Everything has some type of meaning to it. So a little bit more of a spiritual thought instead of a I have to thought on how they handle things. And then developer, just that came from 13 to number 7, so they see more potential in other people. The other interesting thing is, even though their dominant domains were still pretty high in the strategic thinking, relationship building went from 2 up in the top 10 to 3 up in the top 10. 4. So went from 2 to 4. So they're putting more of an emphasis on creating real, true, authentic relationships with people, and not as many influencing where, hey, it's about me to help move other people forward, and more about what can I do to lead you instead of, you know what, no, what kind of connection are we actually making? So that was interesting. Individualization went from number 1 to number 10, so still in the top 10. Still very important to see things and people as their uniqueness and that we are all different. Competition went from number 6 to 23. So everything, they don't have to win at every single thing in life in order to feel like they're worthy, in order to feel like they're accepted. They don't look to other people and have to be concerned about what they're doing in terms of if their self is doing things the right way. It's not based on where everybody else is in life. Again, starting to be able to let go of some of that. Now, if you have some of these strengths still up in your top 10 and you're an adult or whatever, and competition is your number 1 or your number 5 or whatever it is, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong or good or bad about any of these. It's just perspectives changes in your story and how you see life and deal with life in the way that makes you successful in terms of your own definition in terms of success. So sometimes it's good to let go of some of these, and sometimes it's good to bring in other ones. A lot of times people stay pretty darn consistent throughout the years of their lives, and that's great too. That doesn't mean you're not growing. It doesn't mean you're not evolving. It just means that you're growing within your own strengths instead of making some perspective changes as you go. In terms of the bottom strengths, basically they're number 27 through 34 are at the bottom and have stayed at the bottom. Restorative went from 29 to 27, so still not about problem solving, not gonna look at something and immediately see what's wrong with it and figure out the solution for it. Focus went from 30 to 28, discipline 33 to 29. I mean, basically all of these lower strengths. Futuristic is really the only one that there's a difference at. That is now 32 and it was at 20. So it didn't go from high to low. It went from mid, where maybe futuristic wasn't something that was in the forefront of their mind, especially at 19 years old. They're probably just living life, at that, what's going on now, and eyes wide open is, oh my gosh, I'm in college and what's happening, and not geared for the future. But now it has actually dropped to the bottom strength. So that just tells me that they don't live their lives by waiting for what's going to come next. That's not the concern. That's not where they're at right now. Now, who knows? Maybe in another 5 years that's going to change. Maybe not. But it can actually cause them stress. And if they're starting to feel worried or they're starting to feel those anxious feelings coming up, it's probably because this is new for them to be concerned about what the future may hold. So anyway, if you're interested in learning more about this and what your perspective story is, how you flow through life in the best way for yourself and other people, and then being able to have, again, that perspective of, hey, other people are going to go through life differently than I do, and they're going to handle things in a different way, and that's exactly what we're supposed to do. So I hope this was as enlightening to you guys as it is to me, and I would love to talk to you further about what's going on with you. Thanks.